If you have a true strange or scary story you'd like to share with the channel, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to send it my way. Or you can email it to me at astheravendreams@gmail.com. Hey there. I think I finally have a story I can share with you about something that happened to me last year. I'm a 34-year-old woman, 33 at the time of this event. I work late shifts at this advertising and marketing firm. I was still pretty new at this place. I'd been working there for 2 years, which, yes, still made me an amateur compared to all the people I worked with. Not that they ever treated me as below them, but they had just been there for 10 plus years. When I applied, I knew that it was a late shift, which was fine. Eventually I would move up and get a better one, but for now it worked for me. Sorry, I'm rambling, but just explaining why I was out late. Anyway, it was around 9 p.m. or so. That's when my schedule ended and I was heading home from work. The route I took was mostly highway, as I lived right outside the busy city, and then surface streets through some sketchy industrial areas before reaching my little duplex in the suburbs. It had been raining that night. I remember because I made a comment to myself about the one time that I did my hair, it would rain. I was pretty tired that night, as I'd been doing overtime all week, and now that it was Friday, it was like my body knew it, and was barely holding together, ready to go home and heat up my leftover pizza, and then crash. I was about halfway home, cruising in the right lane, listening to some music to keep me going on the last stretch. And that's when I noticed this pickup truck come flying up behind me. The highway that I was on was a 2-lane, so I usually stayed to the right, letting people pass if they thought I wasn't going fast enough. I rarely went more than 2 or 3 over the limit, and that only happens when I get into a song, but for some people that's just not fast enough, so I stay to the right and let them be on their way. But not this guy, it seemed. There was a car to my left that was passing, but they weren't going much faster. The truck was riding pretty close to me, so I just slowed down a bit. I didn't even brake check him, just enough so that the car on my left could get ahead of me to pass, which they did. I was thinking after they got back over, the truck would then pass both of us. I guess I was wrong. He didn't pass. He just remained behind me, maybe 3 feet from my bumper, for several minutes. I started getting a little nervous, maybe even a little annoyed. Why ride so close to someone when you have plenty of room and ability to pass them? So I decided to tap my brakes gently, not enough to slow down, but to just flash my brake lights as a, hey, back off signal. This was apparently the wrong thing to do. The truck honked and then immediately swerved into the left lane and pulled beside me. I glanced over and saw this guy with his dome light on staring angrily at me. He was probably in his 40s, baseball cap, and looked like he was screaming at me through his window. I could see the strain or tightness in his neck as his mouth opened, clearly yelling, but I couldn't hear anything he was saying between his window being up and the road noise, and of course my music. Nor did I want to know what he was saying. I looked back at the road to ignore him when he honked. I looked back over and saw him gesturing wildly now with his right arm. Again, I didn't know what the hell he was actually saying or even what his problem was. He was the one who sped up to get behind me, and instead of getting over when he had every opportunity to, he tailgated me. He was making me uncomfortable and I just wanted to move on, so I slowed down even more, hoping he would move on and just pass already. He did not. He slowed down to match my speed. Now we were both going about 50 miles per hour in a 60, with him still in the left lane gesturing and screaming. We even had a few cars come up behind us, building up traffic which never happened that late. I tried speeding up to let people around, but he literally kept pace with me. We were side by side, and now the car behind him was honking. He was in the passing lane and not passing, so he was the one causing the backup. This dance continued for probably 5 miles or so, and I didn't know what to do. There was a motorcycle that ended up passing him on the shoulder, and he swerved at him as he passed. The motorcycle shouldn't have passed on the shoulder too, but I couldn't blame him. He had the opportunity to get out of the situation, and unfortunately the truck almost hit him for it. This guy was insane, and I had no idea why he was doing this. My heart was racing at this point, and I didn't know what to do. I was still about 10 miles from my exit, and the cars behind us were clearly getting more and more impatient, based on them swerving to the sides. I considered exiting early just to get off the highway, but I wasn't thinking straight. I thought exiting and slowing down could be dangerous. What if he followed me and tried to hurt me? But even worse, what if he followed me home? So I panicked, trying to decide if it was better to exit early or take my normal exit. Not that I had much time to think about it, because the truck swerved hard to the right, slamming right into the side of my little car. I did my best to steady myself and look around to confirm if what I saw was real, and I saw 2 cars speed past in the left lane. This guy had slammed into the side of my car, and people just took the opportunity to get by. I was too afraid to grab my phone and try to call for help, afraid that if I took my eyes off the road, he would do it again. I remember screaming in my car for someone to help me, knowing it wouldn't do any good. All the while, I looked over at this guy crying and screaming, "What the hell do you want?" at him. And finally, I got a small grip on myself and thought that if he's going to try to kill or harm me, I wasn't going down without a fight. I dug around in my purse with one hand and grabbed my phone. I'm thankful for the emergency dialer, so I didn't even have to unlock the phone. I called and put it on speaker. My car didn't have any kind of Bluetooth connection because it is older. I immediately began spouting off to this poor guy that I was being targeted on the road by some stranger and that he had hit my car. I tried telling them what mile marker I was at when the guy tried slamming into me again. That time I noticed and had swerved to the right to avoid it. I felt the rumble strips as I went over them and started fishtailing on the wet pavement. I had dropped my phone into the passenger seat when I swerved, so I had both hands on the wheel. I was terrified that I was going to lose control completely and end up in the guardrail. I came to a complete stop on the shoulder, missing the guardrail, thankfully, and tried to catch my breath. And that's when I noticed that not only was there a vehicle that stopped behind me, but the truck also stopped in front of me. All I could think was, please tell me that this SUV is not with the truck guy. It turns out, I had gotten incredibly lucky, and before I could even grab my phone to see if the operator was still there, red and blue lights had kicked on. It was a cop, and I had no idea he was behind me. I grabbed my phone to tell the operator when the truck burned out. The cop's door was open, but when the truck took off, he closed it and sped off with his siren on. I hadn't hung up yet, so I told the operator what had happened, and they asked me to stay where I was as another officer was on the way. I took a moment to collect myself when another cop showed up. I gave her my ID and details, and then explained to her everything that happened. She asked if I was okay or if I needed to go to the hospital, but physically I was fine. We documented the damage to my car when she got a call on her radio and asked me to give her a moment. When she came back, she asked me to describe the truck again, and I did. She then showed me a picture on her phone of that same truck, now with the front smashed into one of those median dividers. I confirmed it was the same one. She said with a smirk that her colleague had got him. It turns out, he was trying to get away from the cop. Tried to take an exit at the last second and was too late and then hit the divider. I got home late that night. The damage to my car was thankfully just cosmetic. My driver's side doors were dented, but I could still open it, and the other side just had scrapes along my side view mirror. Turns out, I had actually gotten really lucky that night. As the cars were backing up, that first cop was one of the ones back there, and he too was trying to figure out what was going on. When the truck slammed into me the first time, he was far back enough that he hadn't seen it, but as he approached the line of cars, he saw the truck swerve at me unprompted and saw me swerve to miss it. He was in the right lane, so he pulled over to the shoulder to be behind me. With the truck and I now out of the way, all the cars were flying by to continue on with their business. But when the aggressive driver took off, the cop made the decision to go after him. The other officer that showed up was apparently his partner, and she explained what he saw. I was thankful that he was there to witness it because I had no clue why it happened, and how to make anyone believe me. I had done nothing to this guy, but he immediately decided to take all of his anger out on me. Thankfully, my insurance did cover the damage. The guy didn't have any, and in fact, didn't even have his license. There was some legal stuff involved in order to get a final settlement, but like I said, there wasn't a lot of damage and I had no medical bills. But I was thankful for it to all be over with. I still have no idea what prompted him to target me. He came flying up on me and was able to pass at any point. He was driving too close, and all I did was tap my brakes. Nothing like this has happened since, thankfully. But I still do a double take when I take that highway or when a truck follows a little too close for my liking. I've had this story that I have been wanting to talk about for a long time. It's the kind of thing that feels unbelievable, almost unreal, like it happened to someone else. I guess it did technically happen to someone else, but myself and my whole family were very much affected by the whole thing. It's hard to explain. Maybe the word surreal is what I'm looking for, but I'll do my best to just give you the information of what happened without letting my personal thoughts or emotions get in the way of me writing it. My older brother, Mark, was the kind of person that just didn't get angry. The entirety of his life, he was the most chill person ever. You could insult him to his face, call him names, yell or threaten him, and not once had I ever seen him lose his cool. He was 5 years older than me, and he was my rock. When I got my first car, which was an old hand-me-down from my uncle, he spent an entire weekend teaching me the basics of maintenance. He taught me how to check the oil, and check my tires, how to change the tires if I ever needed to, and where the jack goes to lift the car. All the basic things that, even though they're simple, a lot of people just don't really know. Another thing he taught me was how to not be an idiot on the road. He would always tell me things like, if someone gets on your tail and wants to pass you, just let them do it. It's not worth getting mad about or reacting to, because you never know what kind of crazy is behind that wheel. I think he lived by that rule. He was an incredibly patient driver. With that out of the way, I want to get on to the day that everything happened. I was about 17, which would put Mark at 22. He was working as a carpenter for a little local group working on a fairly major project that was about an hour and a half away from our parents' house. Because Mark was always a family-oriented person, and he didn't have a girlfriend or kids or anything like that, he liked to come home for the weekends when he could. He would spend time with our dad and with me when I was available. I wasn't too busy or anything. It was just that I had a part-time job at a sandwich shop, so when I wasn't at school, I was usually there. It was a Saturday, I know this because I had to work at noon, and I never worked on Sundays. Mark was home for that weekend, and I remember mentioning to him that my car had made a strange sound the day before, like a popping sound or something. He and I were talking about it, but I really couldn't get into it, so we came to an agreement. He would drive me to work in my car and then take it for a spin around town to see if he could replicate what it was doing. He was concerned that it was something that could become major, so he wanted to be the one driving it if something went wrong. I agreed. I trusted him to drive my car, no issues there. He drove me to my job. I told him I would be off at 5 if he could come pick me up, and he said that he would be there. Then, I watched him drive off. What I didn't realize is that this would be our last conversation. This would be the last time that I ever spoke to my brother, and I hate that our last conversation was what it was. The rest of the story, unfortunately, is from secondhand reports, so I can't tell you that every single bit of it is exactly how it happened, but I have to assume that it is accurate for the most part. These secondhand reports come from the police reports and witnesses to the whole thing that happened, including my cousin who was actually nearby at the time. There was a stretch of road in town where 3 lanes merge down to 2, and the speed limit drops 5 miles per hour. It was always a nightmare because merging and slowing down at the same time seems to be one too many tasks for people on that road. Apparently, Mark was in the middle lane, and a guy in a big black SUV was driving in the right lane trying to get over. The driver of the SUV was a maniac, weaving left and then back to the lane that ended to pass people, and tailgating literally everyone he got behind. He was clearly in a hurry and was losing his mind to the slowdown of traffic. The next part is speculation to some extent, but I would guess that Mark, being Mark, saw the SUV coming and what he was doing, and slowed down a little bit to let the guy pass. Mark wasn't passive-aggressive, and he wouldn't have done anything to block this guy or intentionally piss him off, and he would have done anything he could to prevent an accident. It was reported that when the SUV passed in front of Mark, he slammed his brakes, hard. Mark was able to stop the car. He didn't hit him, thankfully. After this, the SUV driver just sat there. He stopped his car in front of Mark, unmoving in the middle lane of traffic that was already slowing everything down. It was like this for several moments until someone hit their horn for him to go. I don't know for sure that it was Mark, but what I've been told says that it was likely him that hit the horn, which is probable. Again, Mark wouldn't have laid on the horn or held it. He would have probably hit it once or twice, like, "Hey dude, move, please." At that point, it was reported that the SUV driver put his car in park, got out, and then started to walk back to where Mark was stopped a foot behind his SUV. Mark apparently rolled down the window and was just sitting there looking bewildered. The guy in the SUV was a huge dude, reported as being muscular, bald, and tattered up to the top of his head. He was screaming obscenities as he walked up to Mark's window, and Mark put his hands up and said, "Hey man, it's cool, let's just go." This maniac then grabbed the handle to the car and yanked the door open, and then started beating on Mark. He pulled him out of the car and, from what I was told, hit Mark's head against the door of my car multiple times. Then, when Mark fell to the ground, this guy kicked him in the face. The whole thing was over in a matter of seconds. Mark was lying on the ground unmoving, and the maniac just stood there for a moment and then walked back to his SUV and floored it. Just like that. The traffic started to flow around Mark and my car, and the only reason he didn't get run over was because a couple of other drivers had seen what happened and stopped to block the lane. A couple moments later, the paramedics were on the scene and Mark was rushed to the hospital. this is where I have to control myself and try to just state the facts, because it is quite hard for me. The damage that Mark sustained when the man hit his head against the car was bad enough, but it was likely the kick to the face that actually did the most damage. Mark suffered from a subdural hematoma and a major brain swell. The bones in his face were destroyed. His cheekbone and orbital socket on the right were shattered. The paramedics and the medical staff did everything they could to try to save him, but the end result was pretty much the worst outcome. Mark ended up in basically a vegetative state. There was literally nothing they could do to bring him back from it, and my parents had to make the call to take him off life support and let him go. Having to make that decision almost makes it worse. If the man had killed him, it would have been out of their hands. But instead, that monster left him teetering on the edge of life with no way to climb back up. The worst part of all this, the one thing that kills me inside every time I think about it, is that they never caught the guy. He had a faded temporary tag on his SUV that no one could remember or read. There was no security footage of it happening, since this was before cameras and dash cams were everywhere, and the guy just vanished. It's entirely possible that he was just passing through our town on the way to his destination, and he and my brother ended up in the same place at the wrong time. My family was devastated, completely ruined, because this psycho got mad at traffic and mad at my brother for hitting his horn. The life my brother had, the promise he showed, was all ripped away so some lunatic could get his anger out. And then he got to go on and live his life normally. I have to assume that he's probably in prison for something else. No one crazy enough to commit murder in the middle of the street like that would stay free for too long. And I have to keep that assumption in my mind because it's one of the only things that keeps me going. Even if it's just pretend, I want to believe that my brother's killer is in prison for something else and that he will rot there. Mark lost his life way too young, over something so petty and pointless, all over a single act of road rage. I will always miss him, and I keep this idea of you never know what kind of crazy is behind that wheel in the back of my mind every time I decide to drive somewhere, because it was that same crazy that took him from me. Hello. First, I wanted to say thank you for reading my story if you do, because I've been listening to you for quite some time now, but also I know that my story isn't the normal kind that you get. You typically tell stories from the people who experience it, or, unfortunately, deal with the creeps and jerks out there, but this time, I was the jerk, to put it lightly. I was the person that changed the lives of at least 4 people, and believe me, I did not take it lightly. I take full responsibility for everything that happened, and I know there are no excuses for my behavior either. I'm a much different person now, so everyone understands, but when I was in my 20s, I was not the same person I am today. And I take this lesson very seriously, because it could have turned out a lot worse. Back then, I was a complete mess. I thought I was just a confident driver, which was really code for reckless and dangerous, but I didn't care. I rarely wore my seatbelt unless I saw a cop nearby. I regularly looked at speed limits as suggestions rather than law. I even tailgated people who I thought were going too slow until they got out of my way. I was the guy that everyone hated on the roads, and at the time, I didn't care. I was young, I thought I was invincible, and in the nice flashy car that I got with the money I saved up by myself, I thought it was earned. I did get a few speeding tickets before this, which I did dutifully pay off, but not without being an ass to everyone at the courthouse, which I'm also embarrassed by. I was definitely living carelessly, and I regret it. The day everything changed started out as a normal, crappy day. My girlfriend and I had been fighting lately about everything and nothing. Money, my attitude, my priorities, you name it. That morning I left in a bad mood, so I knew when I got home we would probably pick up where we left off. My parents had been on my case lately too about me getting my own insurance plan. I had just been giving them money for my part of it, but after 3 speeding tickets, they didn't want me on their plan. Understandably so. And then my job always seemed to find a way to piss me off. My boss decided that he wanted to act like he knew what was going on in the team, now that corporate was coming down, so he had been micromanaging everyone, so pretty much all of us were in bad moods. Needless to say, I was already in a foul mood when I left work that Tuesday evening at around 6 p.m. It was that time of year where the sun was just starting to set, so we had the nice orange skies going on. Probably about the only nice thing that evening. I just wanted to get home to play some stupid game, drink a beer, and forget about the world for a few hours. I was driving down a main road surrounded by commercial buildings, trying to get to the highway. The road was a single lane with a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit. I stopped at a red light, and after my light turned green, there was a car on my left that also turned, cutting me off. His left turn light would have been red because my straight light had turned green. I immediately honked my horn, clearly annoyed by this, and then went straight. Now I was behind this jerk, and not only did he cut me off, but he was also going under the speed limit. Again, I'm going to try to explain this in my mindset for that time in my life, so before anyone jumps at me in the comments here. He was going about 27 miles per hour in a 30, when I normally go 5 to 10 over that. It made it feel like a crawl. I was pretty heated by this. If he wouldn't have cut me off, this wouldn't have been a problem. But since he did, I was already mad at him and growing more and more angry. So I did what I normally did. I started tailgating immediately, getting maybe 3 feet behind them. They didn't even look up, so I flashed my brights at them a few times and then eventually left them on. The sun was starting to set, so I knew that he had to have seen my lights. But again, he did nothing, not even adjusting his mirror. As my anger increased, I became more and more aggressive. We passed 2 speed limit signs, and as we did, I would honk and point at the sign, yelling at him that it's 30. I know that I would have looked insane to anyone on the outside, but to him, it was like I wasn't even there. He continued on at his speed, didn't glance up at me, didn't even flip me off. I had finally run out of any bit of patience I had left. I needed to pass this guy. I veered over a little to see if anyone was coming, and when I saw the opposite lane was empty, I took the chance. I swerved into the other lane, sped up to pass this guy, expecting to see some older person or maybe someone just not paying any attention to what they were doing. But instead, I saw a guy in his 30s, maybe 40s at the latest, who was wearing sunglasses and some kind of chunky Bluetooth earpiece. He was just driving normally, arm resting on the window, looking completely calm, his mouth moving like he was talking to someone or maybe singing. Either way, the guy pissed me off, so I flipped him off. He looked over at me, and at that moment, he looked confused and his smile was gone. This irritated me even more because how could he not understand why I was so annoyed with him? Either way, I was determined to cut him off, so I sped up to get ahead. The problem with this is that what I was doing is very illegal and very dangerous. I was in the oncoming traffic lane and was so caught up in the rage that I didn't see the car coming toward me. I reacted quickly and hard swerved back over to the correct lane. I assume I barely gave the guy behind me enough space because he started honking, and he seemed to slowly put more and more space between us. The car in the other lane passed as normal. I made comments to the driver now behind me as I left him behind, and, once again, was not paying attention to the road in front of me. Coming up faster than I could react was an intersection with a stoplight. My light was red, and there was no way that I could slow down in time. Now, running the red light was not good. It's not something I usually did, but I would deal with it. What I couldn't avoid was the sedan on the intersecting lane to my right trying to turn left. They had a green light and had every right to turn. And that here I was, about to stop them. About to do the exact thing the guy behind me had done to me. Everything went in slow motion. I hit the brakes as hard as I could, but I knew it wasn't going to be enough. I was going to blow right through that red light at probably 45 miles per hour. I just remember thinking with perfect clarity, I'm going to kill them. The impact was devastating. I T-boned their car right in the driver's side door. The sound was stomach-turning, a horrible combination of metal crushing, glass exploding, and then suddenly an awful silence. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt, of course, and I felt myself being lifted up. But I stiffened at that moment, and my head smashed into the windshield, and then everything went dark. The next thing I remember is someone pulling me out of my car. There were voices all around me asking my name, asking if I could hear them. My head was pounding and I could taste blood. But the worst part, even through the pain, was hearing a child crying somewhere in the background. It was heartbreaking, terrifying sobs, and it cut right through my confusion. When they loaded me into the ambulance, one of the EMTs asked if I knew what happened. The only thing I could manage to say, and the only thing that came out of me was, I effed up. Because even in my concussed, shocked state, I knew this was entirely my fault. I was in the hospital for 3 days with a severe concussion, whiplash, cuts all over the top of my head, my face, and arms from the broken glass. Somehow my head broke the windshield, but I didn't fly out, which is probably the only reason I was still alive. But those physical injuries were nothing compared to learning about all the damage I had caused. I learned that the car I hit was a dad, a mom, and their 4-year-old daughter. The dad, who was driving, ended up with some broken ribs and a fractured wrist. Mom had a concussion and bruises. Thank God their daughter was in a car seat, which probably saved her life. She got banged up and pretty badly traumatized, I'm sure, but was okay otherwise. My car was totaled and completely unsalvageable. Their car was totaled too. My insurance covered some of it, but since I was at fault, and it wasn't something unavoidable like my car malfunctioning, I ended up having to pay nearly $30,000 out of pocket for their medical bills, car replacements, and other expenses. It took me a very long time to pay it off. The financial burden wasn't even the worst part. My parents were very disappointed in me. My dad tore me a new one about how irresponsible and stupid I was, and he was right. My mom didn't say much, but she cried a lot, which hurt me to see. Then my girlfriend came to the hospital to check on me. She said that she was happy to know I was okay, but after she helped me back home from the hospital, she broke up with me. She explained that we clearly weren't working out and that I needed to work on myself first. Again, I knew she was right. I knew that I was the problem. The only thing I had left was my job, and I barely had that. My boss had no sympathy for me and still demanded the same amount of work. and since that was the only thing I had left, I dove right into it. I worked overtime, didn't have a social life, I didn't even have a car. I tried doing one of the taxis, but I was just burning money that I no longer had, so I started taking the bus. I could at least get bus passes that were cheaper. For months following, I had to go to court and plead guilty to reckless driving, running the red light. The judge said that I was lucky because if any of them had died, I'd have been looking at vehicular manslaughter charges. I became a complete wreck. The guilt and shame was worse than the pain and physical healing ever was. I kept hearing that poor girl's cries, and there were a few times where I couldn't sleep at all, knowing how close I came to almost ending 3 lives because I was selfish and impatient. But, as horrible as this experience was, it absolutely changed me as a person. Gradually, I started to understand myself and my life. I couldn't afford a therapist, but I read books and watched videos. I focused on my attitude and how to express my anger. I realized that I was channeling all of it when I drove. That was my escape, my way of letting it all out, but that wasn't healthy. I wasn't just going for a drive to clear my head, I was using the road as my punching bag. The changes that I made were gradual and the road was long, but I got there. I had to earn my parents' trust back, and I still don't think they fully trust me nearly 2 decades later. But I can tell they are proud of me. I never did get back with my ex, but I think that's for the best. We truly were just creating a toxic environment for each other. I paid off the lawsuits. I have a used car, but it's also paid off. And my insurance is a little higher, as expected. But I'm a completely different person now. I wear my seatbelt, I go the speed limit, and I certainly don't lose my cool like I used to. I still do get peeved at people running red lights and things like that, but I handle it a lot better. So, there's my story. I nearly killed a family because I was mad at another stranger, a person that I never saw again. Our lives could have been completely different, and for some reason I was given a second chance. And I certainly didn't take it for granted. So if anyone learns anything from this, just please slow down, put on your seatbelt, and just let it go. Let the feeling pass, and live your life. Because the few minutes you think that you'll save, or the revenge you think you're getting, will never be worth spending the rest of your life knowing that you destroyed someone else's. Hi, Raven. I'm a 31-year-old woman, and I've been listening to you for a long time. What I appreciate most is how calm and unbiased your storytelling is. You let the stories breathe and speak for themselves. Thank you, I do my best. I heard you were asking for road rage stories, and I figured that now was the perfect time to share mine. For a little background, a lot of people change once they get behind the wheel. I know, because I was one of them. My husband and I loved driving fast cars, and we can tell when someone wants to, quote, play. For years, I carried that edge of aggression with me on the road. About 30 months ago, though, I quit drinking. Partly because we wanted to try for another child, partly because I was tired of the haze. Quitting cleared my mind, but it also made me emotional. Behind the wheel, that volatility came out. I worked hard since then to manage it, and I still drive assertively, but the true rage is gone. I say all of this because I understand road anger. Anger usually comes from fear. When someone cuts you off, it scares you, and that fear morphs into rage. But nothing in my past prepared me for what happened that day. My 2 sons, E, who was 8, and N, who was just over 2, were with me on the way back from my first appointment with a new trauma therapist. My mom had been too sick to babysit, so I had no choice but to bring them with me. The appointment was in the city, about an hour from where we live now. The streets there aren't confusing, but they're busy. The main road runs straight with traffic lights, and side streets feed into it with stop signs. I was at one of those side streets waiting at a stop sign to cross the main road. Parallel to me, another side street also ended in a stop. I watched a car pause there, wait its turn, and then make the turn correctly. But the next vehicle, a beat-up van, literally held together with bungee cords and duct tape, did not stop. It came flying around the corner and cut straight across. I started to cross when the road was clear, but the van nearly clipped me. My car's emergency braking kicked in. I laid on the horn, furious. The van finally stopped dead center as if daring me. This was now a quiet, narrow neighborhood road. 2 lanes. No traffic in the opposite direction. So I went around the van. I had barely gone 5 feet when I realized that they were right on my tail. So close that I could see the woman driving clear as day. I slowed, scanning for somewhere to pull off, figuring I could let them pass and maybe get their plate. But the moment that I edged toward the shoulder, the passenger door of that van flew open. A man jumped out and sprinted toward my car. Everything in me froze. I never put the car in park. Instinct told me that I might need to run someone over or take off. For context, my 2-year-old N was strapped rear-facing in his seat behind the passenger side. He was born premature, under 2 pounds, so I kept him in the rear-facing as long as possible. My stepson E sat quietly behind me on the driver's side. The man was maybe mid-20s. He said nothing, just started pounding on my passenger side window hard. I knew that car windows aren't easy to break, but he tried like hell. 30 seconds felt like 30 minutes. When he couldn't break it, he yanked at my side view mirror. I glanced in the rear view mirror, and the van had pulled a little farther back, maybe a length and a half, leaving me just enough space to reverse into the cross street behind me. I should have kept going forward, but fear makes you think strange things. I yelled at E to get down. My toddler was screaming by then, and I shifted into reverse. As I backed up, the van followed. The man who would have been at my window ran to the back door and started beating on it. And then a second man climbed out. He had a gun in his waistband. At that moment, the driver rolled her window down and shouted at them, and I'll never forget her words. "Just get back in the car. I didn't know she had her kids with her." The second man sneered at me. The second one spit through the crack of my barely opened window into my car, onto me, and onto the seat. He had started coming toward my side. And that was it. I hit the gas. I swerved forward, just missing him. My sons were crying and screaming. My hands were shaking so bad that I could barely dial 911, but I managed to call my husband once I got far enough away. When I finally stopped, I checked on the boys. N was still hiccuping with sobs, but calming. E was pale, silent, and absolutely terrified. For weeks after, he had nightmares. Even now, he still scans the road nervously when we drive. I've lived through a lot of trauma in my life. I've made mistakes, I've rebuilt myself, and I'm still healing, but at this moment, being boxed in with my children while strangers tried to attack, etched itself into me and into my kids. I am proud of how far I've come, but that day reminded me why I needed therapy in the first place. So that, my friends, was a collection of road rage stories. Stories where road rage is the central theme in the story. I've done driving stories, I've done road trip stories, I've done driving at night stories, I've done highway stories, I think. I've done a lot of stories about driving. And including some stories about road rage. I remember there was a story once where I read about a guy that he shot into another guy's car and almost hit him. I don't think that was road rage. I think it was just like a random incident. Anyway, not relevant. I have never touched on road rage stories as a topic, as a central topic. So, yeah, definitely some harrowing stories. How do I drive? Trying to think about it. Unfortunately, I'm biased, but I would say that I don't drive aggressively. I drive a little defensively sometimes. I know I have a bad habit of calling people idiots in my head or out loud. Patients can attest to that. Whenever they do stupid things like run red lights. That is the one thing I cannot stand. Like, you can do stupid crap all you want for the most part driving, but if you run a red light, oh my god. I will think the worst of you as I get behind you. Because that's such a common... It was a common thing in Olathe, and it's a common thing here in Rochester. Not as common here, but it's getting more common, I feel like. People just running reds. Like, left turning on reds, going straight through reds whenever other lights are green. It's just... It's insane to me that... And this is no flack towards Dave, the person that sent in their story where they were the aggressor and they messed up and all that. No flack towards that. They've mentioned that they learned their lesson. No flack against that person. This is just my personal thoughts about people in general. Like, running a red light is, in my opinion, the dumbest thing you can do. You make the light after every light turns green. Like, if you hurt yourself doing that, in my opinion, you deserved it. That's a horrible thing to say in my part, I know. But because it's just stupid. Just wait the 30, 40 seconds and then go. It doesn't... I don't know. I'm rambling here. I'm talking, and people are going to cancel me for saying that people deserve to get hurt. I don't think people deserve to get hurt. That's not what I mean. What I mean is doing that is dumb, and the consequences are earned at that point, if that makes sense. Anyways, if you liked the video, hit the like button. Fun fact, this is actually episode 900 on my channel. I put... Mitty's clawing at my rug here behind me, sorry. I put episode numbers on every episode that I do on my spreadsheet, and this is episode 900. She's still clawing at my rug. 900. Crazy. Insane. I'm insane. Anyways, like the video, comment if you want to leave a comment, subscribe if you're new, send your stories to astheravendreams.com or astheravendreams@gmail.com. Go to the website, astheravendreams.com, find me on the platforms there. You can also follow me on social media platforms there as well. You can send in your story. I already said that part. What part am I missing? Oh, join Patreon or memberships for early access to content like this and so forth. I've gone on too long. I hope you're having a beautiful day. Hope you remember you are loved, valid, and important, and the best you that you can be. Do not forget it. Until next time, my friends, much love, and sleep well.